What's good, everybody? It's Batman, and we're going to be doing another reaction video today. We're going to be checking out Jay the Great's another video from him. It's about basically Sasuke versus GAARA. It's actually a very interesting matchup to discuss because we do see both of them fight against Deidara. And we clearly know GAARA is no joke in his own regard. Same thing for Sasuke as well. So I'm actually really curious to see kind of how this is going to go and so on and so forth. But let's get it, and let's see what Jay the Great and Shinobi have to say when it comes to this matchup and topic. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If I had to give my verdict as of now, obviously in any reaction or even scaling videos, my mind can always change on things, maybe be slightly different, whatever, yada yada. I would have to do my homework and analyze it first. But as of now, just going off memory and all that, you name it. And if I had to pick the victor for this matchup, I would say Sasuke, due to the Sharingan, Genjutsu whatnot, and lightning being GAARA's kryptonite, etc. as well. CM2, you name it. So I would be on the side of Sasuke, because I feel like he's just a hard counter for GAARA. And they obviously they're going to have similar scaling to each other as well, which we clearly see with the opponents that they fight against. So the fact that the scaling is similar and so on and so forth at that point in time, basically all I'm getting at is, Sasuke should just have the edge, right? He has the ninjutsu, the elemental weakness against GAARA and all that stuff, because lightning is just going to go through his sand like fucking butter. Like, what does GAARA do? Like, look at Kimaru, what he did when he was in his CM2 state. He was like a walking Chidori, basically. It'd be the same aspect with fucking hebi Sasuke. He puts Chidori around his body, or just does a Chidori, or even is in CM2 and does Chidori, like an Onyx Chidori, whatever. Like, then in the day, you see where I'm getting at. Like, Sasuke, he's a hard counter to GAARA. Like, GAARA's not going to be able to deal with his lightning, attacks, and of him just running straight forward, right? And then even if, like, he does all his sand attacks, Sasuke could literally fly. He could, just literally jump around, avoid, do his snake summoning as well. Like, he has many ways to combat against GAARA's large-scale sand attacks and so on and so forth. So me personally, I would grant it to Sasuke, but that's just me. But it is an interesting and awesome fight. And obviously, if I wanted to do like devil's advocate, I could advocate for GAARA in certain metrics and areas too, whether if it was like a debate or whatever, so on and so forth. But, that's currently where I'm at. And I'm pretty sure the majority would also think Sasuke takes it too.
The Great here, and in today's video we'll be discussing a quite interesting topic that I believe hasn't been discussed amongst creators within the Naruto community and our fandom yet, with that being hebi Sasuke versus early Shippuden GAARA. Also, once again, to join me on this topic, I have my good friend who's also very knowledgeable in Naruto as well, Shinobi. Did you want to introduce yourself to the people, Shinobi?
What's going on, guys? Shinobi here, discussing round 2 with these guys. Let's get it.
Yes, sir. So we decided this topic would be interesting to delve into, as both Sasuke and GAARA had a mutual opponent in Deidara, where they both performed well in different ways, essentially. Hence, with them having a mutual opponent, naturally we asked ourselves who between these two is the superior Shinobi, leading us to decide that we will be analyzing the context and performances and the respective battles against Deidara, as well as any other relevant empirical evidence level Adas, and matching these characters against each other. Now, an additional reason for this video is we've actually seen some misconceptions and miscalculations floating around the community as far as hebi Sasuke's scaling is concerned, with some people even deeming him as KC1 Naruto and beyond as far as caliber, which is certainly questionable. Hence, with this video, we hope to shine some light on where hebi Sasuke realistically scales in the verse. So the way in which we will go about this video is we will have the specific iterations of each character that battled Deidara match up against each other, with them being in character as far as tendencies and behaviors are concerned. We will discuss several relevant aspects of their scaling, comparing these two Shinobi as we go along with the discussion, where we will have a point system giving a point for each aspect to the Shinobi we deem to be superior for each aspect of scaling we discuss. We will then conclude the video by giving a consensus on who would most likely be triumphant in this altercation, and we will even give the probability of each combatant winning as well to top it off. So with the preface of the video out of the way, let's get straight into it. So we will first begin by discussing AP. Now, did you want to give your thoughts on this first, Shinobi, on the AP of GAARA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when analyzing the AP scaling for both these combatants, Sasuke seems to have the better showing, having abilities such as Kirin, for example, that could wipe out the Uchiha hideout in his engagement against Itachi. Even though Sasuke doesn't use this against Deidara, it doesn't mean necessarily he doesn't have it outright. For one, that specific jutsu was meant to be used for Itachi at the end of the day, and there are prerequisites that need to be met before manifesting the...
Yeah, it's also used to kill somebody. That, I will say, Sasuke is going all out, speed, you name it, etc., but he wasn't trying to kill Deidara. He was only trying to kill one of them. and then you know what I mean, and then leave the other. So initially he was, but in Datara was still able to to respond and fight back, whatever you name it. But then eventually gets to a point where he's not trying to kill Datara and so on and so forth. He even admits it and states it verbatim. So that's why he wouldn't use Karen, because he's not trying to kill the people he was going against. He was trying to get intel on Mitachi and find out where he was. So there is that to begin with. So that's probably more than likely the reason why he didn't use Karen. Because if he did, Datara would have fucking got. He would have got bitched. He would have got slammed, bro. I'm just saying, bro. So, but yeah. So there's that to put into consideration. That's the only reason why he didn't do it. But what I say, who would probably hit harder? Yeah, more than likely Sasuke with Karen or even AKA Chidori, right? Especially if it's curse mark infused. So you have all that into consideration. Now, I will say this. Could Gaara replicate the same feat that Sasuke does with Karen? More than likely. It wouldn't, like, I'm going to be honest with, like, especially if it's this Shikaku Gaara, like, if he's whipping out the Shikaku set arms, like, those massive fucking skill attacks he was doing against Datara, he could absolutely destroy the Chia hideout where that was, and you name it or whatever. But when it comes to like what would hit harder, like having more AP, I would agree more than likely Karen. It's like it's literally nature energy lightning. It's even more stronger than any chakra infused lightning attack as well. It's stated verbatim and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what you're working with. And Karen would obviously be way more faster than the Sand as well. And obviously when something has more speed and you name it, more than likely tends to hit a lot harder and have more, piercing AP, so.
The lightning dragon from above. Sasuke would have to use an excessive amount of fireball jutsus, which in reality wouldn't be practical, seeing as Gaara is an earth style user, and using his Raiton or lightning style would prove more useful or practical. Gaara's arsenal isn't meant for heavy hitting attacks per se, more so he manipulates sand to engulf his enemy, and crushing them or his limbs is the goal. So in this matchup, Sasuke takes a nod overall with having feats with the CM2 Chidori, which is at least a 10 times bare minimum amp on his already base stats. We do know the lightning based nature of his Chidori is more suitable for Earth style, and we've seen more impressive feats.
I will say this though, there is so when it comes to the CM2 transformation, TG was actually kind of advocating against this, and I am in agreement as well. When it comes to that, like your chakra does get 10 times more powerful and folded, and you name it. So in a literal sense, it is a 10 times amp multiplier, but when it comes to Sasuke, it's not in a general sense, and the reason why is because of chakra control. If your chakra control isn't great, it doesn't matter how much fucking chakra you have. You're still going to either be only slightly stronger or within a similar ballpark, basically. Look at Naruto as an example, so on and so forth. So, at that point in time with Sasuke, was his chakra control like insane? We have no fucking idea. We have no way to know, whatever you name it. So, at the end of the day, it is what it is. We know he has a shit ton of chakra because he's like the reincarnation of Indra and things like that as well. But overall, like, I would say there's still evidence to the contrary that it's making Sasuke that much more powerful. We see it in the Final Valley of the End. We also see it in Shippuden as well, where he goes to strike Datara twice, but, can't do anything. And then you would think, okay, he should just now, like, better yet, the first time he tries to strike him, you would think he just goes to CM1 or CM2, right? And bam, now he speed blitzes. He doesn't do that. You know what I mean? Meaning more than likely that wouldn't allow him to take out his opponent. You know what I mean? Or he would still just basically accomplish the same feat that happened beforehand. So, that is something you can put into consideration. And when Sasuke does go into CM2 and he's trying to attack Datara while he's in the sky and whatnot, Datara is still able to react and keep up and do things, so on and so forth, even while with that 10 times multiplier. So, overall, with what I'm getting at, it would make Sasuke stronger than his base, I will say that, but would it be drastically stronger or the exact 10 times? I wouldn't go that far because, again, chakra control is extremely important. But that's the only contention I'll have against that.
Feats with the Chidori Spear, for example, which took down the C2 Dragon in Datara.
Yeah, so to Steelman Shinobi's AP sort of conclusion and scaling of both. And
that Shinobi is correct. Like, when he goes to CM2, his Chidori gets way longer in distance when he's in CM2. So, yeah. So, everything improves as a whole. Is ninjutsu, taijutsu, you name it. Genjutsu, all that.
Agree on. I'll start out with Gaara's here.
And it makes sense because it's Sage Mode. It's nature enhanced, a curse mark.
AP. In his battle against Datara, with his special sand that is within his gourd, He's able to crush Data's arm, allowing us to imply his special sand's PSI is sufficient enough to crush a shinobi to death with enough volume. This indicates that at any given moment, as long as Gaara still possesses a sufficient amount of chakra, his sand can crush his opponents with that level of durability. And I'll also add that as far as the sand he utilizes from the environment directly, especially when he's able to use vast amounts of it, it is easy to deduce that with enough sand he can crush his opponents with regular sand from the environment again, as well as the very weight of enough sand as well as enough applied pressure via Gaara's control would suffice as well in crushing his opponents. Now, as far as Sasuke, aside from his Kirin, he doesn't seem to possess large area of effect high AP abilities like Gaara, who is capable of doing such with his sand, but more so high AP penetrative attacks with a smaller area of effect, such as his Chidori and other lightning natured attacks. He also possesses, like Shinobi said, various fire nature ninjutsu, such as his Great Dragon Fire Jutsu, which is capable of manipulating the atmosphere in his fight against Itachi, but to be fair, Itachi's Amaterasu and own fire style ninjutsu aided in this feat as well. However, going back to Kirin specifically, with the right prerequisites met, it possesses levels of AP at least high enough to destroy a landmass around the size of a large hill, up until possibly the size of a small city block when analyzing the approximate size of the Uchiha hideout that Kirin destroyed in this instance. Also note, which I think is very important to note, that Sasuke at this point in time with his feat was not in CM2, here indicating that with at least a 10 tails amp, which is provided by the CM2 form, Kirin would actually destroy more than likely significantly more landmass than it did in this instance, with this amplification being provided and the same environmental prerequisites met as well. Now, to give my conclusion on the AP here, like Shinobi did, in which I agree with, Sasuke has the elemental nature advantage, which is a huge advantage against Gaara, especially who is able to use large volumes of sand in the right terrain. He would be able to negate earth-natured attacks from Gaara, indicating in battle Sasuke's lightning-based attacks would bypass the durability, which we'll discuss further as well, of Gaara's sand more often than not.
Absolutely,
especially
facts.
if Kirin...
I was saying that. I was saying that earlier. Like Chidori, you know, or even Kirin is an absolute win con. Gaara has no answer to that. He has no answer. Like I don't know what the fuck to tell you, bro. You know what I mean? Like he does it. You know, like just that's all I'm saying, man.
Is used as well, being very high in AP itself. Essentially, in layman's terms, with the elemental advantage, Sasuke in theory does not need the same volume of ninjutsu or lightning-based attacks to bypass Gaara's sand because, again, of the elemental advantage. So in theory, he is able to most likely bypass even high volumes of sand at times with a lower volume when assessing the volume of his own attack because of, again, the lightning-based nature negating the earth-based nature attacks. So that's actually something to keep in mind as well. However, the advantage Gaara has, conversely, is that he can, in fact, use a large area of effect high AP abilities such as his special sand and or sand from the environment that he can manipulate, again in vast quantities, as evident by the Datara fight, indicating the theoretical possibility that conversely, the sheer amount of Gaara's sand could possibly be too much for Sasuke to cut through, even with the elemental nature advantage, if he's not using something such as Kirin, which is large in volume itself. However, to be fair, I see this as unlikely, given Sasuke's ability and given Sasuke's cutthroat nature in battle.
Yeah, we've even seen consistency. That's the problem. Like in part one, you name it, like, and Gaara also had Shikaku. Even when he was using Shikaku's transformations, you name it, he was still able to fuck him up. You know what I mean? So that's all I'm getting at. You know.
Battle and tendencies as well, so I don't think he would allow a large amount of sand to engulf him nor take over him, as he has the advantage in another aspect we will discuss later on. So Sasuke being able to attend a 10 times amp, as well as having the elemental advantage as well, would most likely give him the AP advantage in most situations in a set of infinite scenarios. So we both deduced that Sasuke would get a point in the AP aspect, most likely having the advantage in this one. But did you have any final thoughts on the AP comparisons or Sasuke having the AP advantage?
No, honestly, like we've kind of seen the extent of Sasuke's Kirin, if you will, with all prerequisites met, and the extent of the damage that it could do to said terrain per se. And with Gaara, it's not really like that extent of AoE. It's more so, like you said, manipulating the terrain around him to use enough PSI to crush his opponent,
Yeah.
which is impressive, but the extent to do on a terrain, for example, or even what he can do with his penetration abilities with Chidori or Chidori Spear or even Senbon, it's just more impressive overall in terms of diversity and just pure power as well. So I
Exactly.
definitely would give the nod to Sasuke as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. Before I move on, yeah, like Shinobi said, what's interesting about Gaara's arsenal, which a lot of people tend to overlook, is that while he does have the disadvantage in AP, he has the ability to implement a consistent level of AP due to having the ability to use a large volume of sand. So imagine a gigantic sand tsunami coming at you with a consistent level of PSI in a grand scale, right? So that's what's impressive about him and is the only sort of nod you give him here. But like me and Shinobi said, he has the overall AP disadvantage as far as specific levels of AP overall, especially having the elemental disadvantage. So yeah, Sasuke gets the point in this one. So next up, we will be discussing durability. Shinobi, did you want to start off on this one, on the comparisons and the durability of each?
Yeah, absolutely, bud. So yeah, when comparing the defensive capabilities of these two shinobi, Gaara with having the Shikaku infused sand, for example, in my opinion, would grant him the edge. Not only does Gaara protect himself from all bombs thrown at him, for example, the C1, bombs thrown from Datara, his sand is also enough in terms of durability to tank a C3 level bomb that would have done massive damage, if not wipe out the whole village outright, if indeed it did hit. That's a bigger area of AOE than what we saw with the Curing, for example, with Sasuke, with all prerequisites met with the Amaterasu, Fireball Jutsus, you name it, right? We did say he wasn't base, so if he wasn't CM2, it would have been stronger, obviously, but based off what we did see, it wouldn't have been as big of an impact as the bomb that Daedra did, for example. We have to take in mind that the topography of these two are in question, though, being that the Sand Village can give Gaara an advantage with the durability. This is even commented on by Daedra. Gaara is able to make sand out of natural minerals in any environment, but it is not as practical or suitable as it is in the Sand Village, per se.
Yeah.
The Sand has an innate instinct to protect Gaara thanks to his mother's spirit, and so catching him off guard would take incredible speed, which we will get into later. But nonetheless, in terms of durability, Sasuke's best feat really is in his CM2 iteration, in which he does unfortunately take a missile from the C2 Dragon with Datara. He's kind of cornered in a situation where like there are landmines underneath him and there are missiles from above, so his best outcome in that situation was to use his wing, and in which took sustainable damage. It literally blew the wing off. So, and that was a C2 missile after all, which we can rationally say has less potency than the C3 golem that Data was able to protect against with just his sand alone. So, in terms of intangibles or abilities, Gaara takes the edge. In terms of like just defensive, I guess, tangible defenses, I would say perhaps Sasuke would take the edge, but it's not really something to take much note of because Gaara's sand is part of his arsenal and what he uses at all times instinctively. So, in my opinion, out of the two of these guys, Gaara definitely takes the edge.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with the conclusion. I'll definitely against Steelman on the durability aspect discussion. So we of course have to discuss the durability of Gaara's sand itself rather than the Gaara's durability individually, as he heavily utilizes the sand defensively when engaged in battle. By far, like Shinobi already iterated, the most impressive showing of the sand's durability.
Yeah, I will say this: there's a fair argument that Sasuke could potentially be able to tank a sand barrier. You know, like if he gets hit by it, kind of like what Kimari did against him. That could potentially happen. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but because Kimari is built different. His whole thing was about bone defense. He was a tank character, but there is an argument for him to potentially do it. I'm just saying, and what we do know for a fact is that Sasuke does have better durability in comparison to Gaara because Gaara gets knocked out by a C1 explosion. You know what I mean? Or it was either C1 or C2. I don't remember. And Sasuke is able to tank a higher level of explosion. I think it was like C3. It was a big ass one. Now to be fair, he had to go to CM2 to do it. But either way, he loses a wing, but he doesn't die completely. Right? It was only he used his wing as a shield. basically. So the fact that he was able to use his wing as a shield, you know what I mean, and then he loses it, you know, that is pretty impressive because his whole body could have like disintegrated or like been killed or whatever. He was at least still able to withstand it to some degree. Now, to be fair, if he didn't use his wing as a shield, then he would have also got fucked up as well. Like, Deidara did have enough AP to hurt Sasuke. So, basically, all I'm getting at is, you know, what's it called? You know, it's just, it's kind of what you're working with. Like, when it comes to their bodies as a durability, you know, Sasuke is at least just more impressive in a certain regard in comparison, you know, but
was when it protected the Sand Village and tanked the explosion of Deidara's C3 clay bomb explosive, which was implied by Deidara to be enough to destroy the entire Sand Village possibly. Hence, essentially, the more sand under Gaara's control, the higher the durability as the density increases as well as the amount of volume, resulting in more force being required to strain and fracture the sand mass in question. Now, we clearly can't objectively scale the durability of the sand as many variables simply can't be calculated objectively, such as acceleration of the sand, exact mass of the sand, angular momentum, linear momentum, etc. But we can say that Gaara sand is capable of at least reaching levels of durability enough to tank small city to perhaps blatant city level attacks. And I will go as far as to say, most likely even beyond that, as Gaara was fighting Deidara while also protecting the village, meaning he had to
you guys can hear me from because I keep fucking forgetting to mute my shit. What's it called? But Gaara's sand though, that would be greater than Sasuke CM2 durability. Absolutely. Like he did a crazy ass explosion that Deidara did, and he was able to just easily deal with it. You know.
Use his sand methodically to ensure success rather than utilize it all in a all-out attack like he did against Kimimaro in part 1 with his sand tsunami, so keep that in mind, folks. Now, as far as Sasuke's durability, with the Orochimaru absorbed, he certainly gained a buff in durability, even stating that he heals more quickly compared to the past, implying a tougher body as well. Now, in his battle against Deidara, like Shinobi already said, we see him survive and to an extent tank a point-blank range explosive from Deidara while in his CM2 form, which that bomb being at a C2 level, where he would then be able to continually battle Deidara after, thanks to his enhanced physiology due to, again, Orochimaru's absorption and the curse mark most likely amplifying his durability as well. So aside from this though, there isn't much more to extrapolate to scale Sasuke's durability, with his only battle being against an ill holding back Itachi aside from this fight, which doesn't provide much when extrapolating his durability. Also note that Sasuke in general is someone that doesn't have very high levels of durability in comparison to Gaara, as his default tendency is to avoid attacks in general because of his high battle IQ and finesse ability.
And not only that, it's just extremely intelligent to avoid attacks as well. Like, I want to be honest with you, sometimes attacks could have some crazy ass hacks thing that you don't know about, and even if your durability was able to tank it or whatever, or if you're able to survive it somehow, but then now you're dealing with the attack, the hacks element of it, then now you're fucked. You get what I'm saying? So, like, look at Sasori as an example, Delta, you name it, the list goes on and on. So, at the end of the day, sometimes you just don't want to even take the risk and not get hit. Like, if you're using a shadow clone, or like things like that, even substitution, that's fine, but. So, if anything, that's just Sasuke being really intelligent, in my opinion. But I do agree with Jay still. He's not really known for durability. He's not. Normally if he gets hit, he's going to take damage.
Sharingan, thanks to his high level of speed, etc. So, this just further reinforces that Sasuke isn't a tanky type sort of combatant anyway, in comparison to Gaara, who uses the sand to tank attacks rather than evade most of the time, especially a large area of effect attack like the C3. So keep that in mind as well. So in conclusion, when comparing these two combatants, Gaara would take it here as his sand displays much higher levels of durability than hebi Sasuke ever does throughout the narrative. However, please note that again, Sasuke's elemental advantage would, at least to some arbitrary degree, nullify the durability of Gaara's sand, which would certainly be exploited by Sasuke, giving his intelligence and high battle IQ. Hence, we both conclude that the point here should in fact go to Gaara, with him now having 1 point as well. Did you have any final thoughts though on the durability comparison?
Yeah, honestly, it just seems to be more in favor with Gaara, but again, like we've already notated, the advantage of Gaara's durability or defensive capabilities, if you will, really does stem down to the amount of sand he has to manipulate. It really is basic science. It comes down to density, which is mass over volume, you know? So it's like the more volume of sand you have to manipulate, the more mass, it means more durability, obviously. So it is situational, but in terms of what we have seen in comparisons with data, for example, based off empirical evidence, the nod would go to Gara in terms of what he was able to defend against and instinctually, if you will, as well. So it was quite an impressive feat, to say the least, definitely.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, like Shinobi said, before we move on to the next aspect, something to note about Gar's durability, or more specifically, Sand's durability, is it varies. It's not a consistent level of durability because Gara is not always using the same volume of sand in different scenarios or in different altercations. So, terrain certainly matters. The volume utilized certainly matters. The type of sand he's using, i.e., either the gourd sand or the environmental sand, matters as well, as the properties are different. So there are many variables, mostly volume, that help us to determine the level of durability that Gara sand possesses, right? But the general trend, or the general conclusion, is that the more volume that Gara is manipulating, the more volume of sand rather, the higher the level of durability. As the density increases and hence the level of force to bypass it, it must be higher. So that's essentially what you have with GAARA, which actually is something very interesting that most people overlook when it comes to his durability, or his sand's durability rather. So there you guys have it for that one. So this next aspect is quite likely the most controversial and complex to discuss, as it seems many people misunderstand and or misrepresent the speed of GAARA's sand. Now, we thought it would be necessary to first debunk the common misconception that GAARA sand is somehow above the likes of the 4th Raikage's full speed, as he was able to intercept A's attack when attempting to kill 5 Kage Summit Sasuke. So the reason this claim is incorrect is because of the simple fact that the Raikage did not attack Sasuke with a linear attack, nor used linear momentum, hence nor velocity himself, but rather attempted to drop from above to kill Sasuke with a guillotine drop. This indicates that the Raikage wasn't near his full speed, as only gravity alone was aiding him in creating acceleration to increase force, as opposed to his own body speed aiding him, like it did versus Minato, for example, when he did in fact use his full speed. Hence, no, GAARA sand speed is not at that level of speed, and is certainly not displayed to be so in the Deidara fight. In fact, with that fight, you can prove via contradiction that his sand is in fact not that speed, as Deidara would.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, GAARA's sand is not on the level of fucking KCM and fucking V2 Raikage. This is blatantly demonstrated. We even see that when a shadow clone of KCM Naruto, mid Kage level, basically comes up, and like they're over here struggling with Mu, you know, and next thing you know, Naruto comes and just low diffs his bitch ass. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, bro. You know, GAARA ain't built like that. Now, GAARA is able to block a Amaterasu from MS Sasuke, which is impressive in a regard. So his sand is at least fast enough to block Amaterasu speed from a distance, but to be able to block it in close range or medium distance, things like that, hell no. You know what I mean? That would just not fucking happen. You know, so that's the only problem with GAARA. His most impressive sand speed is blocking Amaterasu from a distance, but you know, and that's it. You know, but it's kind of hard to gauge Amaterasu's, you know, speed from a distance and whatnot. We don't really have a lot to work with. Like we see V2 Raikage dodge it effortlessly. We see GAARA react to it with his sand, you know, things like that. So, and another thing you got to also understand as well is Amaterasu, like, you guys know how math works, distance and whatnot. So whenever you're launching something, compared to someone having like sand already in front of you to block automatically, you see where I'm getting at? So like, it's not like, you know, GAARA's sand can move just as fast as Amaterasu. Like if they both launch sand, right? So they both start from the same point A, and then to get to point B, and it's at the same distance and everything. There's, you know what I mean? You got what I'm saying? Like, and if they both were to travel, Amaterasu would fucking beat it by very way far, you know. But the reason why he's able to, because again, GAARA is there, he's at a distance, and the sand is right in front of him. So because of all that distance, or whatever, that's why he's able to deal with the Amaterasu from a distance. Now, if it was in close range or medium, he'd be cooked. And the same thing applies even to someone like Obito. Obito, when he was in close range to Amaterasu, that shit caught his ass. You know what I mean? Because Amaterasu is really fucking fast, you know? So that's just something to think about. But distance is important.
Have no shot of defeating someone at light speed, as he was even inferior to hebi Sasuke in speed, who he neither had that level of speed. Hence, proof of your contradiction proves that that Gaara's sand is in fact not at that level of speed, and his sand is certainly not capable of reaching levels of speed at least sub-relativistic to the speed of light, which the fourth Raikage is capable of doing. So yeah, that's the debunk that. But did you have anything to add on to the claim that Gaara's speed is somehow faster than the Raikage?
Oh yeah, I completely agree. You know, it's really important to understand that Gaara was in a very powerful place when he had Shikaku. When he got removed, he had to go through a very arduous experience training and developing as a shinobi entirely again after that, you know. So to see his performance against Data per se, and to see his sand speed at that current instance, if you will, and compare that to the 5 Kage Summit instance where he blocks the Raikage's attack, it's not that long of a time lapse, if you will. And like Jay said, there's a lot of context as to how that situation went down. It wasn't like a linear attack, it was going downwards. It's more like terminal velocity. So the comparison with his full speed is just, it's just disanalogous, if you will. And so Gaara's speed with Datara, as we're about to mention here, it just wasn't fast at all, not near light speed, if you will. So to say that he can go light speed with his sand in a couple of months is just very fallacious to claim entirely. It just doesn't make sense narratively, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, exactly. So we definitely had to discuss that, as that is a typical claim we hear quite commonly throughout the fandom, and it's certainly a misconception on Gaara's sand speed when actually analyzing the contextual parameters of the event in which he intercepted the Raikage's attack. So definitely have to add that first. But now, when actually scaling Gaara's speed authentically, there are two significant factors to consider, which are that 1, Datara lacked killer intent, only wanting to capture Gaara, and 2, Gaara had to fight off Datara while also defending the village, indicating he was unable to fight in a direct one-on-one confrontation, where the playing field would be more fair. So Gaara's sand is displayed blitzing Datara, which resulted in his arm being crushed, and also displaying speeds, even in large quantities, being enough to stop a falling C3 bomb from Datara. However, to be fair to Datara then iterates that with his arm being crushed, he implies that it was allowed, or perhaps allowed partially, to go on to implement his ploy, which was to sort of engrave or dig small clay bombs into the sand that would later be used to defend Gaara, which would then lead to his defeat with the bombs blowing up in his face, literally simply just digging themselves out of the sand and into the inside of the dome in which Gaara was present. So keep that in mind, and put an asterisk on the speed feat that Gaara is able to accomplish, as once again Datara arguably allowed his arm to be crushed there. So you gotta keep that in mind. Furthermore, in his encounter with Datara, there is enough empirically to deduce, being generous, that there is possibly a level of relativity between Datara and Gaara's sand speed. However, Datara is arbitrarily superior, to a bare minimum, to Gaara's sand, as he was able to have the upper hand in that battle. But however, this is quite contentious because, again, Gaara was having to defend while also combating in an offensive manner as well. So I wouldn't even blame you if you believe them to be quite relative in speed, but overall it's quite a contentious topic.
So yeah, Datara is definitely faster. Like, you know, Gaara is relative to a regard, because he is putting pressure and whatnot, but it's just similar to what, you know, Jay said. He's doing defense and offense and whatnot, and overall, like, you know, they're going at it, whatever, but Gaara is never able to get Datara. Like, he's missing the whole time. Datara is outspeeding him the entire time, you know, and he wasn't able to... you know, he's not eventually able to basically get Datara until he grabs his arm. But then again, there's a verbatim statement where it's basically saying Datara allowed him to do it so he could plant his clays within the sand, because Datara was also not able to land any explosions on Gaara either, you know? So that's the problem. He even tried to distract Gaara and do it on the village to try to create an opening. Still wasn't fast enough and still couldn't hurt Gaara. So then he's like, you know what, fuck it, as a last resort, let me let him injure me, and I can be able to injure him in the process. Kind of similar to what Neji did with the Spider-Man guy from the Sound 4. And that's all it basically was. He just did that strategy, and that's what gave him the win. So, you know, overall, when it comes like with Datara on the bird and whatnot, I would definitely agree he's faster. But Gaara is at least relative enough to where he could, you know, well, he's relative enough to where he could defend himself clearly, obviously, right? Otherwise, Datara would have just killed him, you know, effortlessly. So he's relative enough to do that or whatever, but not when it comes to like, you know, his travel speed and moving, you name it, and all that stuff. Like that bird is fucking fast. Like pretty fast, man.
Conclude that GAARA is relative to Datara in speed. More specifically, his sand is relative in terms of speed. But did you have anything to add to GAARA's speed here with this altercation?
Yeah, so it seems like GAARA does have relative speed to Datara in terms of his sand. Of course, it is contextual because Datara, like you've iterated already, wasn't going all out. Really limited his amount of abilities that he could partake in per se. We see his sand chasing Datara throughout the whole engagement. It's referred upon by Datara to have lightning fast speeds, and that's more so the sand and GAARA's gourd, if you will. Even though it's nearly the same speed, the sand never really had a chance to threaten Datara unless it was intentional with the arm crushing, if you will, which was a ploy at the end of the day to embed, those clay bombs in the sand that in return would instinctively go back to GAARA as a defense and return led to his demise, right?
Yeah.
And also there was the moment with the massive, what I like to say, the sand Chibaku Tensei.
Yeah.
It's contextual because Data threw some bombs at him, thought he got him, and then all of a sudden, because and credence to GAARA and his manipulation of the terrain, he summons this massive prison around Data, but almost instantly Data gets out of it. So it really never seems that the sand speed, if you will, is a threat to Data. The only time it does really do damage to Data, quote unquote, is intentional because that damage led to even more damage on GAARA. So it was just like a chess game, if you will. He was using the limited clay he had, for example, on GAARA. He had to be very strategical in implementing these tacticians, which maybe sacrificed an arm. He didn't lose anything. It was very tactical, and I think it needs more context. But in terms of the sand speed, per se with GAARA, it's relative to some degree, but I don't think it's enough to really threaten Datara at the end of the day, if he was going all out. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So more than likely, the conclusion is that GAARA's sand speed is relative, but arbitrarily inferior to Datara's speed, especially considering he was holding back. So there for GAARA's speed. Now, as far as Sasuke's speed, we see Datara and Tobi concede that Sasuke is faster than them both, with obviously Tobi, aka Obito, lying in that narrative to continue on to carry out his fake identity for the sake of his plot and his ploy with the Infinite Tsukuyomi. But regardless, Datara admits inferiority. With Datara here, unlike against GAARA, having killer intent with him despising the Uchiha quite deeply actually, after his humiliating loss to Itachi prior. In this battle, we see Sasuke seemingly always a step ahead of Datara in terms of battle strategy and speed as well, which forced Datara to use his C0 in one final attack once he realized he was figured out and bested by Sasuke. Additionally, the way in which Datara implemented his battle strategy limited Sasuke's movement via landmine set up by Tobi and airborne missiles via Datara's clay bombs, indicating that Sasuke was still able to have this speed advantage even with disadvantageous parameters implemented against him. Additionally, another aspect we like to discuss, which is relevant enough, is his airborne speed, because as we all know, in his CN2 form, he has wings. The best deduction we could come to as far as that is concerned is that by default he tends to use his body speed rather than his airborne levitation ability, implying that his body speed is superior more than likely than his flying speed, which is something we thought was relevant enough to discuss here. So overall, it is clear that Sasuke is physically faster than a Datara that is going all out and attempting to absolutely annihilate him due to his hate for the Uchiha. But what is your thoughts on Sasuke's speed here in this altercation?
Sasuke's a beast, man. I'll tell you what, bro.
Yeah,
In comparison and really looking at this, Sasuke really was doing work. So yeah, like you mentioned, stated by Tobi at the time, right? He says it's too fast for the both of them, but he uses a combo right away.
Let me honest, I feel like the verdict is very clear that clearly Sasuke is going to be the winner of this, but we'll keep it going. If I need to skip some parts just for the sake of the video, I will too. But so far it's pretty clear, and they're not wrong either. So
really no threat. So yeah, that's not even questionable. But Data agrees with Tobi not only once but twice afterwards, really deeming Sasuke as a real threat in terms of speed. Sasuke dodges the C2 missiles, dodges the landmines, which he does already see thanks to Sharingan. And he does this with like his CM2 using like the aerial mobility of his wings, in time to evade all explosions, if you will. He also deduces how far away the C4 AoE nanoscopic bomb cloud, if you will, would affect, and he dodges that in time as well before it does take any effect on him in totality. So, just in terms of just raw speed feats, we see Sasuke be relevant enough to strike down the C2 Dragon. He uses 2 Demon Wind Shuriken on Deidara, strikes him down with that as well. I mean, he does a lot of things to Deidara when Deidara is going all out, mind you, which is very important to look at the speed feats of these 2 combatants. So, considering that in context, Sasuke just had a lot more noteworthy feats to look upon, and was confirmed by Deidara multiple times just to reinforce that notion. So, yeah, in my opinion, after looking at this, Sasuke definitely takes a nod. Absolutely.
Exactly. So, like we said in conclusion, when it comes to speed, given the available empirical evidence, it is easier to conclude Sasuke is a superior combatant in terms of speed, as Deidara admits inferiority to Sasuke when it comes to speed and is visibly shown bested in physical combat as well when combating Sasuke, while conversely, against Gaara, he was able to execute a successful attack enough to make Gaara go unconscious. But again, to be fair, Gaara was distracted, protecting the sand while simultaneously combating Deidara, indicating an effort to combat Deidara while also defending the village, which allows us to imply at the very least that perhaps Gaara's speed is a little bit higher than what was displayed in this fight. But however, overall, with the empirical evidence available, it is more likely that Sasuke is in fact superior in combat speed, especially considering again that Deidara was trying to annihilate Sasuke and take his life, while conversely he wasn't trying to take Gaara's life, so Sasuke is a superior combatant in terms of speed. Sasuke gets the point in this aspect as well. Now, moving on to the next aspect, we thought this next aspect would be relevant enough to discuss, especially considering the many factors that will be part of the equation in this matchup, with this aspect being intelligence. So, Gaara displays decent intelligence in his battle against Deidara, deducing Deidara is a threat, as no birds like Deidara's clay bomb birds aesthetically inhabit the area.
Yeah, I will say this with the whole speed thing. Sasuke would be faster. Like, Deidara is obviously relative, because if he wasn't, then he would have just got killed right there and then, right? So he's able to at least dodge and even use combat speed to throw a bomb at Sasuke's face to create some distance and whatnot. But he's not equal to Sasuke, because if he was, he could go like blow flow, whatever. Either way, it was just too disadvantageous, you know what I mean? And it wasn't going to go out good, which is why Deidara had to resort to using the bird and create distance. So, again, relative to Sasuke, Gaara would be at least relative as well when it comes to sand and everything. But overall, who is faster, it would be Sasuke, blatantly by feats and everything. Now, with the whole killing thing and non-killing thing, I feel like that it's not really possible to confirm definitively whether or not if that makes a drastic difference, because you can be able to go all out without killing someone as well. Like that you are able to do that. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen it many times, and whatnot. So, like, overall, you could still go all out and use the max amount of speed. The only difference is you're just not going to try to kill the person, right? And so eventually when it comes to getting into contact with them, then you'll just either knock them out instead of killing them, or you'll basically even potentially need to restrain your speed once you get them within a certain distance, and then you can knock them out, things like that. Like, the only way holding back can actually truly mean something is if we have any form of evidence for the other contestant to where they scale so far below that if the other person was going all max out speed, then they would just, even if they didn't want to kill him, they would still kill him because of how fast they are, right? If that's like stated, or if there's any emphasis with that, then sure. You know what I mean? Then in that aspect and emphasis with them holding back, that's why, and so on and so forth. But if the other person at least scales in a similar regard and is not like drastically way less faster, and they're not able to kill them, but they're just, holding back, right? Because they can't kill them and they just need to capture them. Basically, Deidara could be still using his full speed, but he's just, again, he's not going to kill him. It's kind of similar to Kyuubi Naruto. Like, Kyuubi Naruto wasn't trying to kill Sasuke. He was just trying to bring him back to the village, you know what I mean? But he was obviously way superior, Like, he was beating his ass, slams him into the wall, whatever. He's like, hey, if you don't listen, I'm going to break your bones in your body and just drag you back, you know what I mean? So, like, you could literally hold back you know, without having to kill someone and so on and so forth. So that's all I'm basically getting at. But it is definitely, at least objectively in that regard, it's more better for Sasuke. Because at the end of the day, they still have a point. Deidara was holding. He's not trying to kill Gaara. He's trying to kill Sasuke. You know what I mean? So inevitably, at the end of the day, it's still just way better. It's a better look for Sasuke. It really is. You know, I don't know what to fucking tell you, but overall, I won't say it's definitively clear if it truly makes an impact. That's all I'm saying. You know. But it is way better in regard for Sasuke.
Area, and also uses his sand very cleverly, most of the time, mostly defensively, to defend himself and the sand village when Deidara uses C3. However, he is outsmarted by Deidara when Deidara implants small clay bombs in Gaara's sand after getting his arm crushed by it, which gave Deidara the victory, being able to detonate the clay bombs within the actual small sand dome protecting Gaara. But what did you think about Gaara's intelligence here? What would you deem his intelligence as?
Yeah, so Gaara isn't really someone who isn't necessarily intelligent. You know, Gaara has a mastery of the topography that is unmatched in the village. He deduces the bombs and their functionality. Was the first to face off Deidara because he was before he was able to continue upon his covert operation. Being able to deduce that, hey, that bird's looking kind of strange. Let me go check that out, right? He uses his extra eye ability to give him a more intel in terms of FOV. So with his abilities, he is able to deduce things at quite a fast rate, I would say. But it's really more so a lack of his intangibles, which we will get into later, that doesn't give him the intel, if you will, in comparison to Sasuke, which in return does grant him more knowledge.
Exactly. So Sasuke in his battle with Deidara shows very good intelligence and deduction ability, quickly deducing the workings and elemental nature of Deidara's attacks, mostly thanks to the Sharingan and his high deduction and absorption ability, intelligence-wise, which would be the catalyst for Sasuke's plan to use his own elemental advantage to defuse any and all of Deidara's clay bombs, from the landmines to even the nanoscopic bombs as well. In fact, Deidara is shocked by Sasuke's intelligence near the end of the battle, questioning how Sasuke was able to deduce the workings of his abilities so quickly. Hence, it is easy to observe why Sasuke is said to have one of the highest battle IQs in the Naruto verse. But yeah, did you have any thoughts on Sasuke's intelligence here? What do you think about his performance, intelligence-wise?
Yeah, so in my opinion, this one is a lot more in favor of Sasuke for sure. Unfortunately, like I've said earlier, it really isn't Gaara's intelligence per se that gives him a disadvantageous state. It's rather his abilities like the Sharingan that Sasuke does possess, and which grants him visionary intelligence in seeing the nanoscopic bombs, seeing the landmines, seeing the hand signs that Deidara weaves, which are Earth sign, which he's able to deduce. Hey, like my Senbone negated the functionality of these bombs, and he makes hypotheses. Uh, Also, the Chidori Amp sword, for example, and on a whim, obviously Sasuke's never seen Deidara's abilities before, and Deidara did a lot more against Sasuke in comparison to Gaara with the C4, the C2 Dragon,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the C0, etc. And on a whim, and with the extra intelligence he gained from the Sharingan, Sasuke was able to deduce how to negate the functionality within his own body from exploding. He was able to deduce from the get-go the lightning and earth style relationship to one
I'm just gonna
another.
keep it a buck. It's no competition. Satsuki's intelligence is way greater than Gaara. I don't give a fuck. Gaara's smart, but he's not on that level of Sasuke's intelligence. He's just not. I'm sorry. Like I think the best level intelligence feat that Gaara has was in the War Arc, where he manipulates the water within the Mizukage and to where like the boiling point, you name it, all that, and infuses his sand and then creates gold because of it. That was probably like a really impressive intelligent moment, and he out strategized the Mizukage and was able to beat him because of that. But other than that, that's the best thing he really has. So Gaara does like to an extent he does have pretty incredible analysis, and perception abilities, but Sasuke just has way more feats. And Sasuke from day one's always been emphasized as being an extremely intelligent fighter. Even Madara was like, "Hey, this motherfucker's smart." I mean, if maybe I should have waited and chose him instead of Obito. Like.
And And just so in comparison, Sasuke had to deduce more on a whim, while Deidara was going all out, bloodlusted, fueled by Itachi, hatred for Uchiha, etc. Um, Gaara didn't show as much in terms of intelligence. Number one, because of his lack of intangibles, and number two, because Deidara didn't do as much against him, and he still fell at the end of the day. Of course, there is context to consider with the village having to be protected, the expenditure of chakra, etc. But in terms of empirical evidence, Sasuke really had a great showing in this battle in comparison.
To steal Man Shinobi's conclusion, because we both agree on this, and to sum up this aspect and who takes it, we must first acknowledge, like Shinobi already did, and note that it can be said that Sasuke's intelligence seems more impressive due to him possessing an elemental advantage, and the Sharingan, which again, like Shinobi said, are two tools that Gaara clearly did not possess when combating Deidara. Hence, a lot of the intelligent feats were able to be achieved because of the tools Sasuke did in fact possess.
Yep.
While conversely,
And that is unfair to Gaara. That is a good point to bring it up. So
not capable of achieving these same feats because of the tools that he does not possess, again, that Sasuke does, such as the Sharingan. However, regardless of this, and despite the false equivalency when comparing their intelligence, as again, one possesses more advantageous tools than the other, Sasuke does in fact possess a higher level of intelligence, as he simply has more impressive intelligence feats against Deidara, and even in other battles, such as against Itachi. While conversely, Gaara simply lacks the intelligent feats to put him above someone of the caliber of Sasuke. Now, to further reinforce the premise that Sasuke is more intelligent, Sasuke on a whim, more than not, very commonly, and more often than Gaara, is able to deduce the workings of Deidara's abilities at a very, very quick rate, implying his very high battle IQ and very high deduction ability, high rate deduction ability in comparison to Gaara. Gaara wasn't able to deduce the workings of the clay bombs themselves as quickly per se. Again, you could say the Sharingan aided Sasuke, which certainly was an advantage again that Gaara did not have. However, even with the clay bombs that are visible, Gaara never came to the conclusion that Deidara was capable of making the clay bombs even smaller, to the point where they could hide in his sand, where they could possibly be used to take Gaara out, which is something he didn't need the Sharingan to do, right? Because the clay bombs that took out Gaara were still visible to his naked eye. He simply didn't deduce that it was possible, while conversely, Sasuke was able to deduce the workings of Deidara and his clay bombs, again, with the Sharingan certainly aiding him, such as being able to perceive the hand signs that he utilized, which Gaara is just not capable of doing. But overall, again, we do deduce that Sasuke has the better intelligent feats, again, because of the tools he does possess that Gaara doesn't, and because of the intelligent feats he is capable of he's able to accomplish in comparison to Gaara. So again, Sasuke gets the point on this aspect as well. But moving to the next aspect, now with this aspect, we believe this discussion starts to become even more interesting, as we certainly must discuss Shikaku at this point in the narrative, with this aspect being Hack's abilities. But did you want to start out with this one? What do you think about Gaara's Hack's abilities here?
Okay. Yeah. So first and foremost, these two combatants in question have completely different arsenals and Hack's abilities. So Gaara has a completely different array of abilities, like I just mentioned. He specializes in terrestrial manipulation, being able to fly as a result with sand, can terraform it if the occasion calls for it, having the ability to manifest sand from minerals in his terrain as well. He can manifest extra eyes to increase his vision, and has what the sand call the ultimate defense with this unique Shikaku infused sand, which has a bigger density and is also faster, as mentioned on several occasions. He also does have this unique ability in which the iron harvested from the blood of his foes actually does continuously harden the density of Gaara's sand as well.
Yeah.
With Shikaku, it is interesting because Shikaku not only does give Gaara bigger density and bigger speed, but you have to be obviously faster than Gaara's instinctual sentient sand, if you will, to even stand a chance against him. And as we have mentioned earlier, his durability is quite insane. But yeah.
Exactly. That's a good point. So to steel a man further, like we have been throughout this video, as we all know, at this point in the narrative, GAARA is still the one-tailed Jinchuriki. GAARA possesses many tools with his sand, which Shinobi also iterated, which includes abilities such as the Sand Tsunami, Sand Coffin, and his infamous Sand Eye, which allows him to be completely protected in a sand dome, while still being able to observe the battlefield and his opponent, which is very useful in battle. Additionally, as we have said previously in the video, he can manipulate vast quantities of sand to protect and or attack his opponents, with even just the sheer weight of sand being enough to suffocate and crush most opponents he faces. Now, with Shikaku rampaging and emerging, we can deduce that he is low to blatant Kage level, as Shikaku stalemated Rasa multiple times when Rasa attempted to kill GAARA during his youth, which actually allows us to most likely also deduce that at this point in time with Shikaku is probably even more powerful, as typically as Jinchurikis age, especially if they have seals, they typically become more and more powerful, for example with Naruto's seal. So that's also a possibility here. So GAARA certainly possesses many hacks with his sand manipulation ability, like Shinobi said, from terraforming, contorting large volumes of sand, etc. So he possesses quite the arsenal here of hacks. But going to Sasuke here, Sasuke possesses also a plethora of abilities, from variations of lightning-natured attacks to Sharingan Genjutsu and visual prowess, enough actually, a lot of people forget this, to temporarily shut down the chakra link between a Jinchuriki and their tailed beasts, as he did with Naruto and Kurama when he was about to kill Team 7 led by Yamato at the time. He also of course possesses enhanced physical durability, physical prowess, and enhanced regenerative abilities thanks to Orochimaru.
I'm not gonna lie, that wallpaper goes hard, bro. That's a badass wallpaper, man. That goes hard.
Finally, of course, he is
holy shit,
achieving at bare minimum a 10 times amplification in power thanks to the curse mark being able to go to the CM2 stage, indicating that all his attacks, including Kirin, receive a substantial boost in potency and destruction as well. So both of these individuals do possess a large quantity and plethora of abilities. But what did you think about Sasuke's hacks here, and how do you think it compares to GAARA's here in this battle?
Yeah, Uchihas are broken.
Absolutely.
So like you've mentioned, first and foremost, Sasuke has a Sharingan. It's a tool of precognition, if you will, in which his opponent needs to be considerably faster than Sasuke to even blitz his perspective in the first place. Having the Sharingan gives the user an innate ability of Genjutsu as well, which Sasuke is not a slouch at all. He's not comparable to Itachi, of course, but it is a tool that could be implemented on people who are not resistant, like GAARA, for example. Like Jay mentioned, the CM2 does give him flight as well as durability, extra AP, and the regeneration is actually pretty damn good, because actually after his wing got blown off, we see it just get regenerated right away. So it is something to take note of. But in terms of who has a better array of abilities and how they would fare against each other, one, it is certainly contingent upon the terrain that these combatants are in. But in terms of just in a neutral location or setting, I would definitely give the nod to Sasuke, just because having the Sharingan, Genjutsu, he can fly as well as GAARA. Durability is enhanced, the AP, his reflexes, and already really impressive speed, already amped by the CM2, is enough said already, right? So in terms of just diversity, his jutsu diversity is quite impressive as well, ranging from Raiton to Fireball jutsus to just a lot of things he can utilize. So combined with Genjutsu and his already tangible stats, I would definitely give the nod to Sasuke here as well.
We even said this before the video. Essentially, truth be told, Sasuke possesses a kryptonite arsenal to somewhat of GAARA's talents, because not only does Sasuke have the elemental advantage, as we have established already, but he even has the ability again to sever the link between GAARA and Shukaku if need be temporarily, like he did with Naruto and Kurama earlier in Shippuden. Additionally, he has hacks capable of beating an individual with even Genjutsu resistance, as he was able to attempt a Genjutsu attack against Deidara, who has again Genjutsu resistance due to his hate for the Uchiha, and then, thanks to the Sharingan, was able to, in a way, blitz Deidara with an attack after he attempted to kill him with nanoscopic bombs. And this was all thanks to the Sharingan again being able to perceive the hand signs of the clay bomb jutsu utilization. So simply put, it is quite clear Sasuke has the overall advantage in Hack's abilities in this matchup. Again, basically having the kryptonite arsenal to someone of Gaara's talents.
Yep.
And once again, Sasuke gets the point on this aspect as well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If Jay and Shinobi really wanted to make this video summarized in a short and simple consensus, they could have easily done so. Easily. They basically went the route to really explain it in depth and in full. This way to just to blatantly show why, it's in favor for Sasuke,
So, to go into the final aspect of scaling that we thought was relevant here, we have win conditions. But what did you think about Gaara's win conditions here to kick off this part of the video? What do you think about his win conditions?
Yeah, Gaara certainly is situational here, right?
Yeah.
There are ways he could win, right? Let's not say he absolutely has no chance. Same for Sasuke, right? This is a competitive battle to say the least. But with Gaara, there is one way he can face against Sasuke and his hacks from intangibles, like we discussed with the Sharingan. They have faced off before in the Chunin exams, and the Uchiha name is quite notable and has quite a lot of notoriety, especially as a Kazekage. He would know that Genjutsu would be a threat. And as we have discussed earlier, covering his body and eyes with his ultimate sand and using the sand eyes as an extra perception amp can outright negate the threat of Genjutsu altogether. There is the question of the air mobility in question between the two of them, and also the durability with Gaara. If he's able to manipulate enough sand from his terrain around him, it is hard to say that if he can tank a C3 bomb from Deidara, then how is Sasuke gonna just Chidori him in the air, right? So we'd have to say that like Gaara is fast enough to manipulate the sand and do all these things in the first place. So it is contextual, it is situational. There are prerequisites that have to be met, but they can be achieved, and that's how I would see Gaara taking advantage. It would probably come down to, if he is fast enough, like I've said, the defense is being so too hard to maneuver past, so that it really comes down to a battle of attrition. And with Shikaku and being a Jinchuriki, he's got quite a lot of chakra to utilize. So
Exactly, yeah. So for Gaara, like Shinobi said, it is safe to deduce the environment would certainly factor into his chances of success, indicating that if he and Sasuke were to combat in a desert per se, his chances would certainly be better, with sand being abundant in usage there. One of the best win conditions for Gaara would be to utilize large amounts of sand, like Shinobi said already, to throw Sasuke off and keep him on the defensive, to avoid the Genjutsu threat or any problematic lightning-natured attacks from coming at him directly. Perhaps also implementing this strategy until fatigue begins to kick in for Sasuke would be advantageous as well, as his physical stats and attack potency would also begin to diminish in the process. Now, aside from this sort of multiple angle large scale attack, the only other good win condition would be Gaara allowing Shukaku to take over, which would make Gaara most likely more powerful, possibly. However, even that's contentious given how well Gaara did it without Shukaku against Deidara. Also, on top of the fact he never seemed to decide to use Shukaku on top of that. Hence, truth be told, the win conditions for Gaara are not very abundant when analyzing and deducing his best options for success against Sasuke. However, again, environment would greatly alter the chances of success for him, dependent upon the geography that they are combating on, and also the parameters established as well, right? Like Shinobi said.
And we're back. The team is looking down the barrel of a 455.
With enough.
So one thing I will say, and we'll before we end the video, is the only thing you can really argue for Gaara in defense is to deal with the Genjutsu one. Obviously, fuck me, you'd have to keep his eyes closed, have the eye in the air while not looking or watching Sasuke. He could put himself in that sandball as well. And look with the eye as well while attacking, kind of like what he did with Deidara, right? That's a good way to counter Genjutsu. And basically just try to keep pressure on Sasuke the whole time with his sand, as he normally does, right? And just basically kill Sasuke with the moment he's able to grab him. And that's the best way to try to combat against Sasuke. But the only problem is Sasuke's an intelligent fighter. He has ranged ninjutsu, incredible combat styles, and taijutsu, lightning style that blatantly is kryptonite to Gaara. It's just, I just don't see it, man. You know what I mean? And then with CM2 with Sage mode in correlation as well, along with amplifying everything, and just Personally, the way I'll see it is if this fight has contentious value, right? Let's say it does, right? Maybe base Sasuke probably won't be enough. Maybe even CM1 probably won't be enough, and they'll have a good fight. But the moment he goes into CM2, he's going through and he's hitting his ass with a right Chidori. You know what I mean? That's the way I see it. Or it'd be a Kirin. You know, so I'm just being honest. You know, like that's kind of the way I see the fight going. Or if it's not like that, and there's like just a little bit of contentious value, meaning like a low diff victory, then Sasuke at any point either just wins with his lightning style, jutsus, and just gets up and close and then kills Gaara. So that's basically what you're working with. It's either like a mid to high diff fight, but he wins because of CM2, or it's a low diff fight, and he wins due to like his jutsus, ninjutsu, you name it, etc. That's basically where I'm getting at. But let's finish this video.
Sand already at his disposal from the initiation of the fight, that would certainly aid him. However, if he doesn't have sand sort of already distributed amongst him for combat, Sasuke's speed, as we has established, is superior, would be a problem, as he could possibly blitz him before sand could be utilized effectively, as he is faster, as we have deemed earlier in the video. Now, as far as for Sasuke, with win conditions in mind, there are multiple win conditions that are likely for him here. He could blitz Gaara with the lightning natured attack. As we have established again, he has superior speed, and that he could cut through most sand defenses, more likely with him again having the elemental advantage and the volume of the sand not being too great. He could also possibly genjutsu Gaara, again, with Sasuke having the skill of severing temporarily the chakra link between Shikaku and Gaara, and kill Gaara afterward. Also, if he really wanted to be thorough, he could even use Kirin to wipe Gaara off the face of the planet, truth be told, with a very high AP that attack possesses, especially in his CS2 state, with the 10-time power amplification it provides, essentially possibly even being higher than C3 in theory, if you take into account the destruction Kirin did without CM2 being utilized. So there's a possibility that the Kirin could even be superior to C3 bombs, which is a high level of AP, plus the elemental advantage he would have, which would be very detrimental as well, indicating that Gaara would have to use an insane amount of sand to tank something of that caliber, possibly an island-sized level of sand, which is a gargantuan amount of sand to utilize, which we don't see Gaara use very often. It would be very difficult to tank something of that caliber. What are your thoughts on Sasuke's win condition, and who you think has the advantage in this aspect in the with win conditions here?
I certainly agree with you, bud. Yeah, Sasuke definitely just has multiple ways to make this more favorable for him at the end of the day. He already has the proven speed feats to outright blitz Gaara, if need be, before he gets into the air and starts causing a ruckus with the sand manipulation and defenses and etc. Right? So that's certainly a possibility. I don't see Sasuke wanting to prolong the battle if he doesn't have to. He's quite intellectual in that department, at least. If he does have the Kirin, like you've already mentioned, even though the Kirin didn't destroy as big of an AoE as the C3 Golem would, per se, having the elemental advantage is quite noteworthy, to say the least. And Sasuke, if he really wanted to, could in some way have a rendition of that scenario with using a lot of feral jutsus, etc., to make the prerequisites happen in the first place. But yeah, with speed, genjutsu would certainly be problematic. The elemental advantage, etc. I definitely see Sasuke winning in multiple fashions here.
Yeah, exactly. So it is quite clear that Sasuke has more win conditions than Gaara in this matchup again, essentially being the kryptonite combatant to Gaara in his talents overall. So it's very clear that Sasuke gets the point in this one as well. So hence, in conclusion, we nearly have a sweep as far as who has the advantage in the various scaling aspects we have discussed, with it being 5-1 for Sasuke. Now we get to probabilities and levels of difficulty. Did you want to begin with the probability for each winning, as well as the difficulty here?
Yeah, so going over Sasuke first and foremost, the probability of him winning this engagement at the end of the day is quite likely, considering his unique arsenal of abilities with the Sharingan, precognition, tangible stats in speed, flight, CM2, etc. Considering that he has multiple ways to win this engagement, I would say the likelihood to be on the safe side would probably be around, I think we both agreed, about 70%.
Yeah.
They do have intel on each other. Gaara does have ways of winning, perhaps contingent upon terrain and situation, of course. But considering Sasuke's intelligence, speed, and points that we've already addressed in this matchup, I would say Gaara has a 30% chance of winning, Sasuke 70% at the end of the day.
Okay, so yeah, we both agree with the probabilities and statistical percentage of each coming to victory. As far as levels of difficulty, Sasuke at worst would have mid difficulty in most scenarios against Gaara, while conversely, Gaara with his 30% probability of victory would have extreme difficulty in defeating Sasuke, given that again Sasuke is essentially the kryptonite to Gaara in this one. For Gaara to have that probability, to have the odds on in his favor, again he'd have to have the geographical advantage, fighting at a desert perhaps, and perhaps Sasuke being more arrogant, perhaps on some random day during this day where he's more arrogant.
I absolutely agree with the results that they're saying. Absolutely, it is a really good way to picture it here. So Sasuke more than likely takes it. It could be either low diff, or if it is medium to high, then basically he would have to just go see him too and defeats him. Gaara, the only way this motherfucker could have any chance of winning is if like the terrain is good for him, like if he's in a desert, things like that, whatever. Maybe he could do it, but even then, I think that might be a stretch, So, but that's kind of what you're working with, man, Because let's be, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Even when he had the terrain advantage, but to be fair, he had the handicap of the village. But even when he had the terrain advantage, his speed was still struggling to get Datara, like the sand speed. So I don't really think anything really changes that much, But yeah.
And is not as cutthroat nor as calculated, which we saw, I guess, to be fair, in early Shippuden when he was about to annihilate Team 7 due to their inferiority. But again, this is very unlikely, which is again why Gaara only has about a 30% chance, and that's being generous to an extent with Gaara. So Sasuke, all in all, is certainly the superior shinobi. Here having superior physical stats as well as superior hacks.
Alright, so we don't need to watch any more W video altogether for Jay the Great and Shinobi. Shout out to them as well. Make sure to check out the YouTubes and everything and whatnot, guys. If I remember, I'll put their shit in the link in the description down below. But as always, guys, if you guys enjoyed this reaction, make sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, subscribe for more content, subscribe to the channel. Plenty more along the way, and I know it was a little bit of a lengthy one, but I do it for you guys and whatnot. I want to kind of switch it up, and when it comes to Jay, he either does short ones or he does lengthy ones. Same thing with TG. So, but hey, it is what it is, and I know a lot of people like it. Some people may not, but overall, this will at least satisfy the people that do like lengthy videos. So, but as always, guys, let me know. Peace.